So if you have financial freedom, all of a sudden you have other freedoms, right? Other freedoms mean you can travel more. It means you can eat organic food. It means that you don't always have to be on a budget. It means you can live where you want to live. You can drive where you want to drive. You can help who you want to help. All right, welcome to Finance Friday. I'm Jerry Fetta, CEO and founder of Wealth Dynamics. If you are tuning in tonight live, I want to thank you for joining me. If you're watching the replay, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, your drive, wherever it is, whatever it is you're doing, to tune in tonight. So, guys, I'm Jerry Fetta. I'm the CEO and founder of Wealth Dynamics, and I've been doing these Finance Friday courses for a number of years, right? And the big focus here is financial literacy. Okay, financial literacy. This is a key thing. To me, it's messed up that we don't learn more about this. But if you think about this, like at what point in your life did money start encroaching on your lifestyle, on your freedom, on your choices, on your loved ones, on what you can do, on what you can't do, right? For me, it was pretty early. Okay, it was pretty early in life. And so I wasn't taught that we live on an economic planet. I wasn't taught that money does, in fact, make the world go round. And I wasn't taught what to do to understand money. I wasn't taught how to increase my income or even earn income. I wasn't taught what to do with money once I got it, how to invest it, none of that stuff. Right. And so the result was I graduated from high school and I was smart enough not to go to college. I wasn't doing anything that required a degree. And so I was like, well, I didn't like school. That wasn't a great experience. I didn't want to go back to that. Who's with me on that? Show me some likes if you are. Right. So I didn't. And so I avoided the student loans. But I grew up broke and I grew up poor and I watched my family struggle because we didn't understand how money worked. Okay. Now, fast forward to where I'm at now. I'm 32 years old. I'm financially independent, right? I've helped, families, individuals, entrepreneurs all over the country, build more wealth and improve their financial freedom, right? But this was something that when I learned how easy it was almost upsetting. You know what I mean? It was almost upsetting. Like I was like, I could have learned this in sixth grade. Right, I could have learned this in sixth grade. And so what I want to talk about tonight is I'm going to be doing a deep dive in the blueprints of financial freedom. So if you've not read my book, this is it, Blueprints of Financial Freedom. I wrote this a number of years ago. And guys, it's really important to understand this is not my information. Like I didn't come up with all of these secret new ways to build wealth. That would actually be really concerning if a 32-year-old was like, hey, I discovered newly the ways to build wealth. And I actually started doing all this in my mid 20s. So imagine someone in their early to mid 20s, like I just discovered the ways to build wealth. You should be concerned about that. That sounds like the beginnings of a cult, right? Like that's not a thing where you'd be like, yeah, right? So the book that I wrote, The Blueprints of Financial Freedom, I'm going to talk about tonight. This was over a decade of studying the top 1%, right? Like looking at historically, what did these guys actually do? How did they actually build their wealth? Hey, what's up? Jerry here. I just wanted to give you another reminder. Grab my book, Blueprint to Financial Freedom. It's going to be one of the best books you have ever read on finance. I can promise you that. You're going to love it. It's also a free offer. So if you go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo, you can get that now. Right. Prior to that, I was a licensed financial advisor. I work with Dave Ramsey in about 8 different states. And I helped clients all over the country, right? And I did the traditional thing, save up your money for retirement and all this stuff. And part of my story goes like this, right? So my mom was my first client. And shout out to all of the supportive moms out there, right? But my mom was my first client and we did all the stuff. We put money in the retirement account. She had Social Security. She had a pension. The house was sold. She had equity from that, no debt, nothing, right? Age 60 comes around. 59 and a half is when you're allowed to start withdrawing money out of retirement accounts and finally living on the good old nest egg, right? She got diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and 6 months later she was dead. And as her financial advisor and as her son, like those were 2 different viewpoints I was looking at this from, but I was like, man, that's the plan. That's the thing all of us have been told for the last, I thought it was forever until I started to research and I realized, well, this is actually a really new plan. This idea of go to school to get good grades, to go to college, to get your degree, to then pay off the student loans so that you can get a mortgage, so that you can pay off the house, so you can have a nest egg and a retirement plan, and you basically defer your entire lifestyle until you're 60. right? And we get caught in this thing where we either have time or we have money, but we don't have both. And sometimes we have neither, right? I've been there where I've had neither, where I had no time and no money. That was also not fun, right? But you either have the time and you don't have the money to enjoy the time with, or you have the money, but you don't have the time to enjoy the money with. And most of us are caught in that trap. I was talking to a new client of mine today, and she's like, I'm making $250,000 a year, but I don't have time to enjoy it. I'm paying off all the debt that it took me to get where I'm at. And I don't have the free cash flow to actually enjoy the income I'm making, to do, the things I want to do and travel and take like the actual fruits of my labor. Right? And guys, I'm here to tell you tonight that that's not wealth. Okay, my definition of wealth is abundance and prosperity in all dynamics of life, all areas of your life, abundance and prosperity, right? Now, I also believe that there's a obsolete definition of wealth that I think definitely applies. Obsolete means it was canceled. Wealth originally meant happiness, right? Who's ever heard this? Money can't buy happiness, right? Show of hands or show me a like if you've heard money can't buy happiness. We hear this all the time, and it turns out that's the definition of it. Okay, now, why are we given these? Because these are blatant lies, right? Like when you hear money can't buy happiness, and then you go look up the definition of wealth, and happiness is one of the definitions, and you see the word obsolete next to it, meaning that it was canceled. There are individuals who will control the definitions of words in order to control a population. If you can control the vocabulary being used, if you can dumb people down, just like if you can control the money, you can control people. Right? So what we teach is become free financially. And that doesn't mean free from work. That doesn't mean free from ever adding value. It means you are not, like, no one's got a string around your ankle. No one's got their thumb on you. You can do what you want to do with your finances. Okay. Now, this concept I'm going to dive into in the blueprint tonight. We're going to break this down into a series. So this is going to be the first of many parts, right? But one of the very first things we look at on the blueprints, and I'm going to share my screen here as I go over this, is the understanding that wealth is not financial products. Wealth is not math. Wealth is not rates of return. Wealth is a way of living. When I say abundance and prosperity in all areas of life, that has nothing to do with the rate of return on your investment. That has nothing to do with your tax rate. That has nothing to do with what type of trust you set up. That has nothing to do with where your retirement accounts are invested. It has everything to do with, can you, and like my shirt says, I'm going to show you guys right here, can you treat money like oxygen? Okay? Can you treat money like oxygen? If you can't treat money like oxygen, to that degree, you're lacking wealth. Right? And treating money like oxygen means that I don't think about money in my day-to-day life. Like, who has ever had this weird thing where you all of a sudden start thinking about your breathing? I don't know if you guys have experienced this too. Show me, just so I don't feel alone, show me some likes or something like that, guys. If you've ever experienced this where all of a sudden you are aware of your breathing and you are all of a sudden consciously putting effort into breathing in and breathing out, and it kind of becomes a stressful experience. You're like, what if I stop? Right? I don't know if you guys have experienced that before, but I definitely have once or twice where I'm like, that was weird. It's like the Twilight Zone, right? But this is what money should be like. You shouldn't need to think about, can I afford that? That's the equivalent of thinking about breathing. You shouldn't need to think about, is there enough oxygen for everyone to have? Is that person the top 1% of breather taking all the breath that nobody else has any? Right? Could you imagine the chaos that would break loose on this planet if we were like, Sabina, we need to start taxing your breath. Lauren, you've really been breathing too much, and I've been meaning to talk to you about that. And your consumption of oxygen is too high. You need to take some of your oxygen and give it to someone else. Right? Like, that would be weird. If we started rioting outside of people's houses because of how much money, how much oxygen they were taking in, right? It would be a very violent planet. And this ties in with a quote from Gandhi. Poverty is the worst form of violence. Okay, so here was how I started learning finances. I'm going to share with you guys where this went wrong. Okay, because wealth is the desire to leave an effect with your life. What do you want your life to look like? What is the effect you want to leave on this planet when you're gone? That's where wealth starts, right? And I never was taught to start it with that, right? I was given the discussion of like, when do you want to retire? Right? Not like, what's the result? What's the legacy? What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to create while you're on this planet for the amount of time you have? Right? Instead, it was like, hey, it's just inferred that you're going to quit working because socialism, right? And so when you quit working because you're too old to be valuable anymore and you should go live your golden years out, what do you want to do? Right? And this concept of retirement, guys, this actually came from Otto von Bismarck. This was a chancellor in communist socialist Germany in the 1800s. And it was a ploy to get rid of older people from the workforce because the belief system was that there weren't enough jobs. So instead of starting businesses where jobs get created, they said, well, no, there's a scarcity of jobs. So instead of creating more opportunities, we're going to get rid of the old people so that the young people can take their jobs. So they created the idea of retirement. Okay, retirement was not something we did in America for a very long time. It was more heavily adopted under FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? And if you guys don't know who that was the man who pulled the gold out of private citizens' hands and outlawed it and said gold is now illegal for you to own, right? And so this is something that when we look at it, we're like, this retirement concept, it doesn't come from a good place. It doesn't come from a good origin, right? And so also the other part of this is not only where it come from, what is the result, right? You look at the result. When you look at the result of retirement, the average retiree gets Alzheimer's and dementia quicker. They get sick quicker. Their lives are shorter. Statistically speaking, the mortality rate on those who retire is much higher than those who don't. Okay, and I'm sure you guys have all met this person. Tell me and show me some hands if you guys have ever experienced this person that is 85, 90 years old and they don't act it at all. They're still excited about life. They're still getting up with enthusiasm every day. They're still working their business. They're still out doing the things that they were doing when they were younger. They've not slowed down. Why? Because they didn't retire. They didn't retire. Now, the other thing with retirement is that very few people actually do it. The Social Security Administration themselves says that only 5% of American citizens will be financially secure at retirement age. 5%. That's a failing rate, guys. 95% of people are not going to be financially secure at age 65. So I was given the conversation of like, what's your retirement number? How much do you need to have in the nest egg, Jerry? And we're going to work backwards from there. And you need to, pay off all your debt, and you need to pay off, first buy the house and then pay off the house and then buy the car and then pay off the car and then give the money to Wall Street so you can take the money away from Wall Street and spend the money. And it was never a conversation of like, what do you want your life to look like? What does abundance and prosperity in all areas of your life look like? And so I was immediately thrown into this, and I started getting all these financial bells and whistles. The mutual funds and the individual retirement account and the 401k and the credit card and all of the stuff, the savings account, the certificate of deposit, the insurances, all of these things, right? And I immediately, I was a financial professional at the time, so I immediately was like, okay, I need to go into study mode. The average American doesn't say that. They just get all this stuff and then they get confused because they have this stuff that's not normal. It's not something we're used to. And it's just like, oh, these are all the things you're supposed to do because that's how you build a financial future and that's how you retire. So what do? We immediately get into like, oh, I need to understand the complexities of stocks and bonds. I need to understand how mortgages work. I need to understand what a 401k is. I need to understand taxes. And we get into like the nitty gritty. And guys, I want to give you this example. If you were building a house and someone was like, okay, cool, so we're going to start building your house. First question, when do you want to burn it down? Right? Like that's the first question. Or like, when are you going to move out? Not, like you haven't moved in yet and they're already like, when do you plan on leaving? Right? When do you plan on getting rid of this thing or selling it or destroying it? If that was the first question I was asked by a team that was building my dream house, I would be like, what the hell? That would be weird. Think about that. If you were like, that was the first question, and then you were like, I don't know, and they're like, okay, well, usually you would leave or we would burn it down or destroy it when you turn blah age. So we're going to build the house for you to be able to do that when you turn blah age, because you're not going to want this thing anymore, right? And you'll move on and do whatever you're going to do. And it's really important that you have all of these tools, and they just throw the hammers and the wood and the drywall and the insulation and all the stuff at you, and you're just covered in stuff, right? And then they're like, now you need to really understand how fiberglass insulation works. And you need to really understand why there's copper inside of these wires and how we're going to rig the electrical system. Never once have they asked you, what do you want the house to look like? How big should it be? Who's going to live there with you? What color would you like it to be? All of these things would be important, but instead, you're thinking about when are you going to move out of the house and what it's going to be made out of. Do you guys see the problem with that? The very first questions you should be asking are about the house, not when you're leaving, not what the materials are going to be. Right now, here's the other thing. The people who are building your house have never built one for themselves before. That would be the other interesting piece of this. Imagine that. The contractors have never actually built something before. We've drawn pictures, we read about houses. I've never lived in one. I would like to someday. Right? Like how you'd be like, this is a joke. This is a joke. There's no way I'm going to have this person build my house. This is how it works with our finances. We're being asked, when do you want to quit working? When do you want to leave? When do you want to retire? And then, oh, you need to know how all of the tools and all of these different things work, all the stuff, right? And then the financial advisors that we're working with, they're not even financially independent themselves. They're not wealthy. They're probably more broke than you are in most cases. They're just sales guys for Wall Street and banks and insurance companies, right? And that's what's happening in the financial world. And so my first thing is this. I'm going to share with you guys the first couple of steps here on the Blueprint to Financial Freedom. And for those of you guys that are live, if you have questions, throw those in the chat here. But I want to share a couple of the steps here on the Blueprint to Financial Freedom so that we can kind of go through like, where should this actually start, right? Now, the first part of this, these are just the first 3 steps we're going to talk about. When we work with clients and members, the very first thing we do is we say, you need to get educated. You need to get educated. So there's a number of books that we go into that we have you read in order to start getting educated. Right? Think about, when was the last time you sat down with a financial advisor and instead of telling you like what your asset allocation should be or how you should be diversified or what they want you investing in, they were like, hey, before you do any of that, read these books, study. Okay. Now here's the thing. Wealth, abundance and prosperity in all areas of life, the best way to understand that is to study people who have done it. Who has actually done it? Okay. Now here, track my logic with this. For me to study someone, they actually need to be dead. Okay, because I can study someone today that's alive and they might fumble, they might drop the ball, they might screw up. And now all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is not really someone I want to study under anymore. Okay, so I only study dead people. If they're alive, they are disqualified, they can't be on the list. Okay, now you're like, Jerry, well, you're alive. Okay, so when you're studying me, I'm sharing with you what I learned from these guys. None of this is the gospel of Jerry Fetta. Absolutely zero of it. It's what have I learned from studying these guys and how am I implementing it and applying it? And I want to share that with you because it's been working. And it's been helping a lot of people, including me, right? So I want to go through a couple of these. So the first one I would have you guys read is the Blueprint to Financial Freedom. This is going to be the condensed version, right? And I'll give you a free copy at the end of the webinar if you guys stick around towards the end as a free gift, right? But this would be the starting point. And in the book, it's going to have you start to look at, what does wealth look like for you? Okay, now here's the thing. Like our goals, typically they come from our perspectives, the way we look at things. Okay, who has ever had the experience where you study a book from someone that's really wise, or you listen to a podcast, or you consume content from someone that's winning in a certain area, and they share something and it changes your perspective for the better? Now all of a sudden you're thinking bigger. Now all of a sudden you're looking at options and possibilities that you didn't even have on your radar before. Maybe it's a complete paradigm shift where you're like, man, I used to think this one way and now I think completely different. Or maybe I didn't even think about this at all because I was completely unaware of it and now I do. Okay, so I would say if you're thinking about building wealth, right, you are going to be shortchanging yourself if you don't study the right people. Okay, now these are my people, right? So a bunch of these books are from me, right? These are books like The Blueprint to Financial Freedom. This is kind of a condensed version of some of the other stuff you're going to see here. How to Create Wealth, right? That's another one that gives you some very simple, basic, actionable steps. I'm all about simple, true, and applicable. There's a book I wrote called How to Protect Against Bank Failures. In 2023, we had a record in bank failures in the US. And so I wrote a book about how to become your own bank and how to protect from bank failures, right? Man in the Arena, right? That's one of my favorite books I've written because it's a true story about me and some of the goals that I have accomplished, the obstacles I've overcome. You know, we've all got that man in the arena thing, and that's featuring Teddy Roosevelt, right? Teddy Roosevelt, the man took a gunshot to the chest with a bullet in his chest, gave a 60-minute speech. I want you to think about that. Like you're going to give a speech, somebody shoots you in the chest. Usually that's where you die, right? Like you literally get hit in the chest. And then he goes on, he gets on stage and he gives a 60-minute speech with a bullet in his chest and blood pouring out. And he doesn't let them pull him off the stage. And then he almost beats the guy to death with his cane when he's done. Right? Like I want you to think about like that. So why is Teddy on there? Teddy Roosevelt, he did a speech called The Man in the Arena. Right? And this speech talks about it's not about the critics in life. It's not about those who point out how we stumble. It's not about those who, they're armchair cowboys. They're just sitting there being spectators. His whole thing is it's about the man that's in the arena, the person that's actually giving it their all, whether they win or lose, whether they succeed or fail. Right. And so a lot of times with wealth, it's like, well, what are other people going to think about me? What's my family going to think about me? What about my friends? What about maybe even my spouse? If I start pursuing this wealth thing because it's weird and it's different, it's not what they do. And so Teddy Roosevelt's saying it doesn't matter what they think. Right. He calls them the cold and timid souls who never tried. They've never actually stepped into the arena. They're cold and timid souls. Don't listen to cold and timid souls. Right? Teddy Roosevelt had $1 million in cash value in a New York life insurance policy, a sacred account in the early 1900s. Right? Teddy Roosevelt is a badass. So that's somebody that I've studied. And so that's somebody that I emulate. And if you start learning some of Teddy Roosevelt's stuff, you're like, man, this sounds a lot like Jerry. Well, that's because that's someone I look up to. Right? Another one, The Way to Happiness. This is by a mentor of mine, L. Ron Hubbard. This is a fantastic book, The Way to Happiness, right? So this is 21 precepts on how to live a happy life. Why? Because we hear money can't buy happiness, right? The root of the word wealth, the obsolete definition is happiness. There's 21 precepts in this Way to Happiness book. There's 21 steps on the blueprint, right? And so this is something that as I'm reading through, like one of the steps there is flourish and prosper. Right? As a kid, I was taught a lot of things. I was taught the 10 commandments. I was taught don't lie, don't cheat, tell the truth, don't steal from people. I was never taught, Jerry, it's a moral and ethical obligation to yourself and to mankind that you flourish and prosper. That's one of the precepts in this book. When I learned that precept, it completely changed my life. It completely changed my life. There's an entire chapter in here on the importance of being competent. The importance of being competent, to learn, to look, to observe, to actually see what you see with your own eyes. And that's the definition of personal integrity, to see what you saw and know what you know and stick with your guns. Right? Completely changed my life. Gospel of Wealth by Andrew Carnegie. Okay, Andrew Carnegie, this is the wealthiest man in American history, America's first billionaire, and he died almost penniless because he gave all of his wealth away. In inflation-adjusted net worth, he's still today wealthier when he was at his top, wealthier than Jeff Bezos, than Elon Musk, than Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. All of these guys we hear about today, they don't touch Andrew Carnegie. And so Andrew Carnegie believed that it was literally a responsibility for those of us that have money to take care of society. He said it was not the government's job. And he basically said it's an embarrassment to die wealthy. If you die wealthy, it's an embarrassment. He was responsible for literally inventing modern day philanthropy. Like he was the father of modern day philanthropy. He's responsible for over 2,500 libraries that he put there, churches, gymnasiums, swimming pools, colleges, theaters, right? So this is a guy that had it all, and his goal was, I want to get to the very top of the top, literally the wealthiest man in United States history, and died penniless almost. He gave all of the wealth away other than maybe $100,000. That money he gave to his daughter. The rest of it all went to society. And this changed my thought on legacy, guys, because we hear a lot about like, give money to your kids and your grandkids and set up these trusts that last forever. And here's the thing is that the money's going to be worth less in the future. The assets might not even be there. Let's say you have a bunch of stock. Who says Apple is even going to be around when your kid is inheriting that money? They might be gone. It might be on to the next thing, right? If you got a bunch of cash, we already know that that's going to go down in value. So what's a better legacy to leave, a bunch of assets and cash, or a better society for your family to live in? I picked the second one. Not only that, it's not just your family, the society itself is getting like an inheritance. Like if you put libraries there, that helps everybody. You put schools there, that helps everybody. You put churches there, that helps everybody. Right? So Carnegie completely changed my perspective on that, because he was like, the goal is not to build up a bunch of money and then just hoard it and just build it for the sake of building. And he's like, get rid of it. Like use it in your life to like live a wealthy life for sure, but you have a responsibility to society. You're a steward of that, and you're using it for the better good. Here was the other thing he mentioned. He said that stops government overreach. The idea that we need to tax everybody more money because these people need help means not that the people don't need help, because if you look around, they clearly do. It means that those who have the money aren't stepping up. And I'm not just talking about the 1%. I'm talking about all of us. If you have savings and investments and assets and you've got surplus in your building, like it should be part of your plan that you are donating that. You are doing some philanthropy. You're helping society out, because otherwise it's what? Just pay off the mortgage and invest for retirement. So Carnegie changed my viewpoint on that. Hey, you want to see a magic trick? Get a copy of my book, Blueprint to Financial Freedom. I know it's in front of my chest and my face because I want you focusing on the book and not me for a moment before you go back to focusing on me and the content. Benjamin Franklin actually was a top 1%er. He has a book called The Way to Wealth, right? And so one of the things that I love about Ben Franklin is that he is somebody that keeps things very simple. Very simple. If you follow what Benjamin Franklin is talking about in his books and precepts, it's impossible to mess up. Right? So here's a guy that literally in the 1700s was a founding father, backed up, the independence of the United States from America. In his biography, and you guys could check this out, he calls bullshit on the Tea Party. He says, we did not rebel because of the tea prices. He said, we rebelled because the United States colonists created their own currency, and the Bank of England didn't like that because we were no longer using their banking system. Their banking system was run by the Rothschilds, just like our central banking system. So England, the Bank of England, was making interest on every dollar that was in circulation, and the US colonists said, well, we're no longer going to use their dollars. So that means that the Bank of England is no longer making that money. The Bank of England told the king they need to use our currency, and they made it to where it was counterfeit if you didn't, and the penalty for counterfeit was death. They were going to kill you if you didn't use England's currency back then. Franklin said that is why we rebelled. That reason. It had nothing to do with the tea tax or the tariffs. It was that we had our own currency. We were flourishing and prospering. The colonists were doing great. And the Bank of England didn't like that because we weren't using their money and they couldn't earn interest off of us. They couldn't use the banking system against us anymore. Right? And it's very interesting because when we became an independent nation, we didn't have a central bank for the longest time. We purposefully left that component out. So Benjamin Franklin talks about that, right? And he's the father of some of the best quotes out there. Guys, so you've all heard this quote, no pain, no gain, right? And it's kind of this like gangster, a little bit thug, a little bit rough around the edges quote, right? So Benjamin Franklin was actually like the original inventor of that quote, except for when he said it, it was like, if thou hath success, thou hath struggled, or it was something like very old school, right? So I cracked up when I read that because it's like like no longer gangster. It's like that's like old King James, as white as it can get, right? But the other thing I like about Benjamin Franklin, guys, he was a freedom fighter. So he is one of the only founding fathers that gave up his slaves. He actually became an abolitionist, and he actually started the very first foundation in American history that helped African Americans become free and integrate back into society as free men and women. I thought that was incredible. So he spent the last years of his life on that soapbox of like freedom means everybody, guys. It doesn't just mean those of us that are of the right skin color. Right. So I thought that was very cool when I learned that about him. Nelson Nash, becoming your own banker. Okay. So, and guys, as I'm sharing these books with you, it's because these are the viewpoints that I have. These are the guys I have studied. These are my mentors. These are the founding fathers of wealth dynamics, if you will. Right. These are the people I'm studying. I'm not studying Elon Musk. I'm not studying, these modern day guys because they're not dead yet. Elon could go broke tomorrow. He's almost gone broke several times. That's not who I want to study. Okay, so Nelson Nash took the concept of using life insurance as a banking system and made it public. Right? I just said Teddy Roosevelt had $1 million in today's equivalent in cash value in a whole life insurance policy with New York Life Insurance in the early 1900s. So you had to be a president of the United States, or you had to be a banker, or you had to be a Rockefeller to know about this life insurance thing. Nelson Nash came out and he actually first discovered this because he got in over his head with real estate. In the 70s and 80s, he leveraged up with a bunch of debt, bought a bunch of properties. He did the same thing that Rich Dad Poor Dad says, which I don't teach that at all, right? But he leveraged and used the other people's money, and guess what? The interest rates came up to like 20%. And he was about to go bankrupt. And he was a life insurance guy. He was also a forester and a pilot, right? But he was a life insurance guy. And he's like, wait, I have money in my cash value. And he started to study this. And he actually stumbled into what the wealthy have been doing for a very long time, which is using life insurance as a private banking system. So he did that. He was able to get rid of all of his debt, get in a better position. And then he wrote the book, Become Your Own Banker. And he is responsible for the concept of all of us, like even me knowing about this. I probably would not know about this had Nelson Nash not been like, hey, I'm a regular guy and I'm going to write this book for regular people so everyone has access to this concept. Right? Another very common sense person. Charlie Munger. Okay. Charlie Munger is Warren Buffett's business partner. He passed away a couple years back, so he's allowed to be on the list now. Charlie Munger is awesome. If you've ever watched the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letters, Munger is somebody that's sarcastic, down to earth, witty, common sense, right? But here's the thing. Before Warren Buffett brought Charlie Munger into Berkshire Hathaway, they were only doing about $10 million a year. They were only a $10 million company. Okay, Charlie Munger came in and he increased that by 13,500 times. 13,500 times, not 13,500%. 13,500 times was the growth because Charlie Munger was common sense. Now, Charlie Munger was a student of Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin wrote under the pseudonym of Poor Richard, right? So Poor Richard, The Way to Wealth by Poor Richard, right? AKA Benjamin Franklin. Charlie Munger studied that and he mastered it and he started to really apply that in his own life and he became a very good investor because of it. And if you study Charlie Munger, right, he is somebody that's going to tell you the same things I'm telling you. Why? Because that's who I study, right? These are the people I'm listening to. So when you're looking at this, like, again, it's not what does Jerry think or what does a financial advisor think? I want you to look at who are the actual best, most successful, exemplary people we can study. Now, the final one, okay, and I had to put this one in here. Mark Twain. I love Mark Twain. Okay, Mark Twain is hilarious. If you've ever read, like, just go on Google and type in funny Mark Twain quotes. You will laugh your ass off. This guy's hilarious. But he wrote The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn and so many other books. But he is renowned for being terrible with money. So there's a book on here called How Not to Get Rich, The Financial Misadventures of Mark Twain. Right? And Mark Twain, he literally, like, he's one of the most renowned writers in history. And he's not like a Picasso where people didn't recognize his fame till after he was dead. No, he was successful in making money while he was alive. He lost it all. He filed bankruptcy. Now, he died a top 1%er because he finally turned it around. But he has a quote where he says, The things that basically got him to lose all this money was speculation. Venture capitalism, angel investing, startups, brand new ideas. This was how Mark Twain lost his money, right? He was trying to look for these get rich quick, uber high returns, put a lot of money in and get a lot of money out fast and not have to wait very much time. If you study Charlie Munger literally tells you to do the opposite. He says, time is your best friend. It's not about buying and selling. It's about buying the right thing and waiting. Buy the right asset and add time, and you'll get rich no matter what, right? But it's a slow process. Mark Twain didn't want slow, right? So Mark Twain ended up filing bankruptcy. Okay, he was somebody that at the end of his life, his quote is, "There's only 2 times a man should never speculate: when he has money and when he doesn't." Okay, I'm going to repeat that. There's only 2 times when a man should not speculate: when he has money and when he doesn't. So otherwise he's saying never speculate. Never speculate. So Mark Twain is somebody that literally did it all the wrong way, lost everything, turned himself around, still became a top 1%er, and his wisdom on the back end is don't speculate. Don't get involved in the Bitcoin. Don't get involved in the tech stocks. Don't get involved in the startups. Don't get involved in the new ideas. Look for the things that have been around for a long time and are going to continue to be around for a long time. Buy those, buy good ones, and just add time. Wait. Continue buying them and just add more time. Right? So guys, these are called viewpoints or perspectives. And you don't need to read every book on this list. We have a whole university too. But guys, this is where the blueprint starts. Right? Like think about, again, if you're building your dream house, wouldn't you want to get an idea of what's out there before you're like, I want the house that my parents grew up in? Well, that's the only house you've ever seen. Wouldn't you want to travel and look at some neighborhoods? Wouldn't you want to read some architectural magazines and see what are other people out there creating? What are your options? Right? Wouldn't you want to go study and look for who are the very best builders? Right? This is your dream house. Like, who are the people who have really done a good job at this? So many times this gets skipped. And guys, I'm gonna hit a couple more points before we wrap up. The other part is the laws of wealth training. This is in our Facebook group and in Wealth Dynamics Nation. But these are reductions of these books, of these mentors, these people, right? It's what are the laws of wealth? And the idea here, and we'll talk about this next week, the idea here is all knowledge can be reduced down to a handful of simple points. Right? I want you to think about it like this, right? And I don't want to spoil what I'm going to talk about next week, but I'm going to give you guys just a quick teaser. Okay, if you think about it like a pyramid, and at the bottom we have all facts and knowledge, right? And at the top, we have natural law, right? And so what that would mean is that all facts and knowledge stem from a couple of natural laws. And I'll give you an example of this. Gravity is a natural law, isn't it? Right? If you drop something, it will fall, right? So now we have a fact that if you drop that glass, it's going to break. Why? Because it comes from the natural law of gravity. If you jump off that building, you will get injured or die. That's a fact or a piece of knowledge. Why? Because of the natural law that gravity exists, right? So you can take all of these different facts, and if you can learn the natural laws at the top, you can just think with the natural laws and come up with the facts yourself. You don't need to memorize all of the facts, right? Because you know gravity exists, how many good decisions are you able to make just knowing there's a thing called gravity? You don't need to study like, what happens when you jump off a building? What does that look like? What happens when you drop a glass? What happens when, you jump out of an airplane without a parachute? Like what? I need to go study that scenario. You don't need to, do you? Because you have the natural law of gravity. You understand gravity. You end up falling. Things fall. Gravity pulls them down. And so you already know you can think with it. Okay? One of the number one things that plagues people today, and this is what we're going to talk about next week, it's another part of the blueprint, is the inability to think for themselves financially. The inability to think for themselves financially. So when we don't think for ourselves financially, what ends up happening? We have to ask other people, well, what do you think? I need your advice. I need to pay for someone else's opinion because I can't think for myself when it comes to money. Right? Now, what if I could learn the natural laws, start to think for myself? I wouldn't need to pay these other people, would I? I wouldn't need to go out and ask for opinions. So you can ask any one of my clients this. I'm not big on giving advice and opinions. I want you to learn. I want you to learn. We have an entire online university because I want my clients to learn. I want them to not need to ask me questions. Why? Because they've been empowered to think for themselves. Okay. Restriction of knowledge is the number one way to create slavery. So think about this. If there was a group that could make money on the fact that you didn't know something, you did not know something, and they could make money on that, they could capitalize on that, they could exploit that, what would their incentive be for you to ever learn that information? Zero. Why? Because they lose their income. Okay, I'm going to ask you one final question before we wrap up. Why isn't money taught in school? Why isn't money taught in school? Think about that. What did I just tell you? If there was a group that benefited from you not knowing, what would be their incentive for you to know? It wouldn't be there. There you have your answer, right? So guys, this is all about, again, the blueprints to financial freedom. The blueprint to financial freedom. Okay, I want to pull up, and I mentioned if you guys are watching, I want to give you a free gift, a free copy of the book. Guys, this is about financial freedom, right? Financial freedom. And what I have learned is that financial freedom leads to the ability to have freedom in other areas of your life, right? And so if you have financial freedom, all of a sudden you have other freedoms, right? Other freedoms mean you can travel more. It means you can eat organic food. It means that you don't always have to be on a budget. It means you can live where you want to live. You can drive where you want to drive. You can help who you want to help. You know, financial freedom means you can afford to have opinions that might not be popular. Why? Because you're not tied to money, right? You can literally, like, if you believe something to be true and you're like, well, this might affect my paycheck at my job, or it might make me lose clients or whatever, right? And you're like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm financially free. I'm not tied to money anymore. You're allowed to share that opinion, aren't you? Okay, so guys, this is about financial freedom. So if you've not grabbed my book before, I want to give you a free copy. If you scan the QR code right now that's on the screen, you can also go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo. You can get a copy of the book there. Guys, and again, this was my work on studying over 10 years. Over 10 years. It's been almost 15 now, actually, of studying finances, studying the top 1%, and really looking at what is it that they actually did. What are the systems and sequences, right? There's a reason why the rich keep getting richer. There's a reason why there's generational wealth. Why? Because they have a blueprint. They follow a consistent blueprint that works, right? And we don't. Us average everyday people don't. 95% of us are going to fail when it comes to finances. The Social Security Administration themselves, I will show you guys that statistic. 5 out of 100 people will be financially secure at retirement age. 5%, guys. We don't have a blueprint. What we have is we have the McDonald's of the financial world. We have Wall Street and banks peddling products just like the McDonald's drive-through, using marketing tactics and PR and propaganda and all this stuff to make us buy their products and services. And that's not what the wealthy invest in or buy at all, right? There's a difference between financial education and financial marketing. So guys, again, grab the book. If you did not get the book, scan the QR code, do that, go to the link, get the book. And next week, we're going to talk about the natural laws of wealth and start diving into some of those. Sabina asks, is it okay if I get a second copy? Sabina, absolutely. You can get a second copy. Go ahead and grab one, and you can give those out. I just want to check if there's any other questions that came up. Sabina asks, where do I find this list? So if you are interested in the list we went over tonight, the Blueprint PDF checklist, send me an email or comment if you're watching on the YouTube or replay. Send me an email at founder@wealthdynamics.com and just let me know that you would like the checklist that we went over tonight. I can send that out to you via email. My address is here in the chat here on Zoom. Otherwise, comment below. Let me know you like the checklist as well if you're watching on the replay. Otherwise, guys, I went a little longer than I intended, but I hope this was valuable for you this evening. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you back again next Friday, same time. Have a great weekend. Hey, this is Jerry Fetta here. I want to thank you for watching my video, watching my content. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to learn more about the Blueprint to Financial Freedom and how you can achieve passive income that exceeds your savings, your expenses, your taxes, your generosity, and build wealth like the top 1%, I want to encourage you, grab a copy of my book, The Blueprint to Financial Freedom. You can go to jerryfetta.com/B2F promo, or you can click the link in the description of the video here. The copy is free. You cover your shipping. We'll send the book out to you, and we'll send you an email with a bunch of great bonus material also for free. Get the book, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on my next content.